How do we combat religious intolerance? Practitioners of any faith would reject religious intolerance directed against their faith. Yet that rejection is not enough to end religious intolerance generally, nor is secular rejection of religious intolerance sufficient to end religious intolerance. The agreement by non-theocratic states to end religious intolerance, an agreement which now exists, has not ended religious intolerance. The general acceptance by the United Nations of the principles of religious intolerance has also not ended religious intolerance. Of course, one can say that of many, if not all, human rights principles, that we have yet to see their full realization. Yet religious intolerance is different. For most human rights standards, their implementation to be effective through state action or inaction. Religious tolerance requires more than state action or inaction. It requires behavior from the religious. As long as there is intolerance from the religious, religious intolerance will remain with us. That is not to say that secular states are powerless. They can enact and implement laws against religious intolerance. They can support the teaching of religious tolerance through public education and the school systems. They can repeal and refuse to enact laws which promote religious intolerance. Internationally, states and intergovernmental organizations can stand against religious intolerance, either allowed or promoted in other states. Intolerance towards religion is something that regrettably some states adopt and all states should oppose. Yet, a large component of the responsibility for combating religious intolerance falls to the religious. As long as the religious are intolerant towards other faiths, combating religious intolerance will continue to be difficult. Every faith would reject intolerance towards their own faith. Faith leadership needs to cooperate, to join in solidarity, to realize and act on the realization that they cannot effectively end intolerance against any one faith, except by jointly combating intolerance towards all faiths. How do we get to religious tolerance? We shall succeed in ending religious intolerance when those of any faith are as outraged about intolerance against other faiths as they are about intolerance against their own. I've been invited to make my remarks here as Senior Honorary Counsel to B'nai Brith Canada, a Jewish community-based organization. This event is addressing the situation in Pakistan, a predominantly Islamic country. How do we end religious intolerance against Judaism? We will get there when those of all faiths, including Islam, are as outraged by anti-Semitism as is the Jewish community. How do we end Islamophobia? We will achieve that result when followers of all faiths, including Judaism, are as outraged by Islamophobia as the Islamic community itself. Thank you.